Khartoum between the military and the paramilitary in that country. Now, back here at home, the Council of Governors is threatening to shut down counties because they say they haven't received resources for the month of February, March and April to the tune of 94 billion shillings. This is what the Council of Governors leadership had to say yesterday to the government.
We therefore call upon the CS National Treasury to immediately release the 94.35 billion owed to county governments without any further delay. By dint of this, the Council of Governors hereby issues a 14 days notice to shut down counties if February, March, April arrears are not released within the next 2 weeks.
And you saw the crisis that was created when national government salaries are delayed for 5 days. So how are we expected to have paid our workers for the last 4 months? How can we not pay workers for 4 months and expect them not to come to work?
All right, that's the Council of Governors Chair and the Vice Chair. They're speaking to the National Executive. And Honorable Elachi, I mean, you've been through all these systems. You've been at the Senate, at the Assembly, County Assembly, but now at the National Assembly. And the county governors, they keep calling on the government to release resources. Up until 23rd of March, they had not received resources for December all the way to April. But now that money for December was released on 23rd of March, of course, more than 3 months late. The resources for January were released last week on Thursday, and again 3 months late. Now they're calling for 94 billion shillings, which is owed to them for the 3 months to be released. How shall we resolve this? And yes, the National Executive keeps talking about they have challenges with cash flow. But how shall we resolve this so that we prioritize counties? Because if we do not do that, then devolution remains just on paper.
You see, Sam, one of the things, and I know when we were in Senate, we really pushed, which I know governors don't like hearing, was to allow to have they can decide the institution or you just take it to KRA. But they mop up for you the local revenue, but bank it in your accounts, in their accounts. Because while we complain all these things, we must accept that the moment we decided we want devolution, it meant the national government will collect revenue. But you know, we took some of the revenues that during the regime of Kibaki, you know, Kibaki used to mop up all revenues and then put them together, then it will be spread to the country or not to all the country. Devolution comes in and spreads all the money, but then we decided local revenue will remain within the counties, and therefore national government cannot mop up that resource. But then we come, and I keep on reminding people, we must accept, even the government must accept, when you close the world for 2 years, then the consequences are all this. And so when you come in, you must have a different way of how you're going to look at the country. While I agree or disagree that you decide you will not borrow, fine, but then you'll have to survive this way. You can't. Not when you're running devolution, unless you want to close it. And so the government must rethink the whole strategy, that economic strategy they have. You must rethink, putting in mind you have a post-COVID consequence that always ties you, that always pushed everyone down. And so for counties, it is important, even if then we are saying we have no money, then we must release salaries to everyone. That is very critical. Because if you want also that economy to start revolving back, then you must throw money out for you to get back, to start. Because even if you hold on it, you'll get into more crisis than the crisis you have. So for this one, they must release money to the counties. I mean, honestly, we are talking of salaries. We are saying these are monies that Parliament had passed. It's a budget that was there. And it is important. We just have 1 month to close to the new budget. And we want to say we are going to go with the highest spending bills than what we have been talking about, Sam. And so I just need the government to, the advisors who talk about this economy, kindly put in and know very well that Kenyans went down, and not just Kenya, the world went down in 2 years. Everyone is surviving. That's why all over, people are looking of different strategies on how to ensure the country is running. Yes, every country has a debt, so we can't just say it's Kenya, but we must rethink, and we cannot allow ourselves to say, you'll hold on this so that you pay, you'll hold so that you don't, you will end up in more debts because people have mortgages. The moment you hold and hold their salaries, they're also going to be penalized by banks. So have you really supported? So I need the team that is, because I'm not an economist, that is talking about reviving this economy to come here and explain to us not how we don't have money. I have said this country is not that we don't have money. This country has money. It's only that 2 years people went down. They are also struggling to come up. Where you're supposed to tap onto your revenues, they are all down. They are also struggling to come up. But at the same time, you must come up in a different way to prove to Kenyans that indeed this economy can work and work in a manner where we will pay salaries, at the same time know how to pay our debts.
Okay, and of course that's not the only what am I saying? It's not the only reason that the county governors are disappointed. They're also disappointed in what the Senate did last week, and this is what they said in as far as passage of a lower amount of equitable
There was
share
no money. Why are you giving the money?
This is indeed a new law for a House of Parliament constitutionally mandated to represent counties and serve to protect devolution. We note with concern that in the history of devolution, the Senate has never voted against the spirit of devolution in as far as the increase of resources is concerned.
All right. So, Senator, I saw a list of some 22 senators that was spreading on social media that you voted against the interest of the counties.
Did you have
First of all, if the Commission on Revenue Allocation recommended 407 billion shillings, how did you arrive at 385 despite the recommendation from the National Treasury? What did you take into consideration to disagree with the CRA?
It's very popular to list 22 senators and say that they voted against increase of resources to the counties. That is a very popular political statement. It is unpopular, however, to justify and explain why 385 was appropriate and not 407. And I would plainly put it this way: you cannot share that which you do not have. When the chair of Council of Governors says that it's the lowest moment, they have failed to speak to the increases that were made. Remember, in the last financial year, the allocation of equity share was at 370. The current share that has been allocated under what we passed is 385 billion Kenya shillings. So, if we were then to look back and say, why would the Senate do this? There was the position taken by CRA. There were reasons they gave. The reasons we equally gave are the same reasons that CRA gave. And therefore, when they...
But arrived at a different figure.
Yes, for obvious reasons. They've just given us statistics. The national government has not released 31.4 billion for the month of February, 29.6 billion for the month of March, and 33.3 billion for the month of April. This is 94.3 billion, which is yet to be released to the county governments. Why? Because of our economic condition, and everyone knows this. The CS Treasury, the two committees relevant in the Senate have had sessions with them, and they have given justifications as to why that could not be released.
For a whole 3-4 months?
Yes, of course. We've just been told here, and you know this, Sam, that for the last 2 years, the situation in this country is terrible. The president, when he spoke the other day that we cannot borrow to pay salaries, is a testimony to the decision, which is very painful, by the way, taken, that, you know what, I'm already in a hole. Do I continue digging this hole, or I tighten the belt for a short period of time for me to be able to come out of this hole for posterity? It was a choice between two extremes. The worst extreme is continue digging the hole. The better extreme was, can I tighten this belt so that I allocate or I share that which I can be able to do it. It doesn't make sense to allow 407 when you will not remit because it doesn't exist. And that is the position that the Senate took, saying, CRA has said, they gave when you read their decision or the position they took and say, we would propose 407, they acknowledge that the first charge on every revenue for a country is on debt, whether domestic or otherwise. That is the first charge. Secondly, the rate at which they all lumped up at the point of maturing is also largely an effect on this one. And therefore, it is a choice that at least we had to make. And it's not true to say that we voted against devolution.
Once the National Treasury receives money,
yes,
pays debt, what should be the second
The first
priority?
charge is, first of all, then pay the national debt.
The second priority?
And then after that, now share what is available.
With who?
By the national government and the county government.
So how is it that the national government is getting its share, but the counties are not?
No. It's not that the national government is getting its share. When we say first charge on revenue is paying the debts, that debt, remember, is not only by the national government. Whatever is even being paid out is what was remitted in the previous financial year to the county governments. And that is what informed this decision. When you hear governors saying that we ought to have been given 407, they are not telling us the fact that we have an increase from 370 to 385. They are not telling us that the financial year 2022, 2023, no, 2021, 2022, and 2023, 2024 has got now the outstanding deficits, which we are struggling to pay right now. They are not telling us that we have national debt that the government
I get you.
is pushing.
I get you that you're saying the reason is because we can't afford 407, but we can afford 385.
Yes.
But because the current financial year, we can afford 370, based on what Parliament passed in the previous session.
Yes.
How then do you explain to Kenyans that it is only once, the month of March, that the national government staff have gone without a salary, but the counties for a whole 4 months, they haven't received the resources? What explanation are you getting from the National Treasury?
And this is one of the reasons why that decision had to be taken, however hard or unpopular it was. Do not borrow to pay salaries. For how long will you borrow? If I delay for 1 week, every amount that I will be looking out for is towards this payment. If I pay, I borrow, I'm digging that hole, which is the basis of this decision. The 385 sum complies with the requirement of the Constitution. The Constitution, Article 203 says you must do that which is beyond 15% of the latest audited national revenue. This amount of 385 is 23.3%. So we're not being told the positives of the allocation. And that is why I was saying it's very popular and politically correct to say we fought against devolution. We did not do it. We were dealing with the reality. It doesn't make sense, as I had said, to allocate 407 when you cannot remit even 385. It's foolhardy of even the government and even the Senate in itself to do it. And so we are being realistic in the decision that you are making so that you can meet the demands of what the law requires you to do.
Senator, that audited accounts, that's your addition. It's not in the Constitution.
No.
It is not.
I mean, the last audited accounts.
That's what I'm saying.
Not the last audited accounts, revenue.
Yeah, it is about, the Constitution talks about for every financial year, the equitable share of the revenue raised nationally that is allocated to county governments shall not be less than 15% of all revenue collected by the national government.
That is exactly what I've just said.
You said last audited?
No.
Which can be lower?
It can be lower, yes. And actually, that's the statistics that the CRA were giving, the Council of Governors were giving. Remember, we also dealt with the budget policy statement that had captured all those, including the county, the national financial fiscal program, currently, in future, and previously.
Okay. Honorable Martha, we've spoken about counties in previous shows, but you also have the advantage of having been at the first Senate post-2010 Constitution.
Yeah.
where do we go from here? Because we are very elaborate in how we budget. Public participation, listening to every institution. And remember there was some conference between, actually the summit, between the president and the county governors. I think it was in the month of February. And they came out and said that we have agreed on several issues on how to resolve the standoff that was governors demanding 415, CRA saying, the governors wanted 415 billion. CRA was asking for 407 billion. The National Treasury was offering 385.
Yeah.
But then after all that, they're still stuck at 385. So one wonders, do these conversations help a thing, or it's
I think
just good to talk?
I think there has been a lot of conversations, and not just with the county governments, even with members of parliament. I mean, I don't think anyone has not said haki yetu. Even as we have said haki yetu at some point in Mombasa, if you remember, with the deputy president then, because we had an issue with the release of CDF money. Honorable Elachi will tell you, even now, we've not gotten 50% of CDF for this financial year. So, in terms of problems and stringent measures in terms of our economy, we are all in the same place. But for me, there are more serious issues and systemic issues at that bedevil devolution than just the amount of money. 385 may look small, may look big, but at the same time, has devolution achieved what it should have achieved? I dare say no, because I was in the first Senate. Elachi was in the first Senate. In fact, that time, we were told there are teething problems that time. So we have gone round. I mean, we have had senators who have become governors, governors who have become senators, members of parliament who have become governors, and who have become senators. In fact, we have had ministers who have become senators, and how they argue now in the House is not the same that they argued when they were governors.
As well as members of the county assembly.
Exactly. So we have even MCAs. Yeah. And I attended the governor's induction retreat in Mombasa as a panelist, and that was actually my view, that we have gone round now for over 10 years, and yet we have not seen the fruit of devolution and what it should have achieved. I personally feel, forget the 385 of more than 400. Even this 385 you're not assured of. As you can see, the Council of Governors is requesting just 94 billion out of 385 billion. So we still have a long way to go. But my issue is on the administration of the county resources. That for me is a bigger problem. And I think in the PFM Act, it's called the Public Finance Management Act, it actually provides for that a county does not spend more than 30%, less than 30% in development. Just 30% out of 70%, out of 100%. That tells you 70%, which is the bulk of the money, goes to pay what? Recurrent. So we are doing, in fact, it's the inverse. It should be the other way around, if you ask me. So we really must get to a point where, and this is my challenge to the Senate, that we must get to a place where someone will be courageous enough to provide a law akin to the CDF Act. Let us know how much goes where.
Yes.
Do we say 15% according to the Abuja Declaration goes to health? Put it there in that law. 15% health, 20% education, ECD and polytechnics. We must spell it out. Otherwise, we will keep doing this over and over.
National legislation or county?
I actually think it should be a national legislation. The same way we have 290 constituencies, but we have a uniform NGCDF law. And that law, it's not us who made it. In fact, it was made way back before we became members of parliament. But when we become members of the National Assembly, we follow it. 2%, like now, the CS Forestry was asking if we could spend more money in terms of afforestation. And our hands are tied. We cannot spend more than 2% in environment. We cannot spend more than 6% in administration. You cannot allocate more than 35% in bursaries. So we know exactly where our money goes, or where CDF goes, so to say. So for the counties, we must get a similar law that will say how much goes where. That way, we don't leave the leeway of one county X saying we are going to pay 700 million for bursaries. Another county X says we are putting it in roads, 1 billion, we are putting in roads. We must get a standardization, and this cannot be done by the different county assemblies. Let us do it at the Senate. I know it is not popular, but it should be done. So that any county governor who wins, whether you come through whatever party, you know exactly how much will go go to recurrent. Then we are able to also rationalize human resource, because it doesn't make sense that when a governor travels, every time he or she stands up, there are 70 people milling around. 70 or more milling around, I don't know doing what. We must get to a point where we have rationalized our human resource so that the development agenda for the counties is achieved.
That may include firing.
Of course, it is a painful decision. By the way, even in your own farm, even here, the media houses, how many times have you had cuts? When the economy goes bad, you cut. Even in your own house, if you're eating meat 3 times a day, when times are hard, you eat once or once a week. It is something that has to be done. And I know many will shy away from it because many want to be re-elected or want to be something else in the next run-up. But someone must be courageous enough to ensure that we have a law. Otherwise, we will not see these billions translating to value for money.
Trillion in Turkana.
That's interesting. I'm just wondering who will do it, who will be bold enough to do it. Daktari, so where do we go from here? And what has been your experience with devolution 10 years later, all these complaints every other time about resources, about what's going on, implementation of services? What have you observed?
I wanted to begin from my perspective. From our religious perspective, there's something we normally say: if you are too much of the law, you only become legalistic. If you are too much of the spirit, you become a fanatic. So what we require here is to have the law, and the spirit working together, then you can agree. Otherwise, if you are just legalistic, then you'll do what you want and tell children, all right, everything's okay. If you become too much of spiritual, you become Mackenzianism. Because now you depend on
Mackenzie.
So now the problem here, I don't think it's the issue of money. The problem is the outcome of what has been happening in the country.
Right.
This is the outcome of what Kibaki did. What did Kibaki do? Kibaki fixed the economy, but he did not deal with the issues. Uhuru came and did a handshake. The handshake solved what we call a political crisis, but did not solve the economy. Now here we are. Now the two point together. Now that's where we are. Are we talking about transparency? Are we talking about accountability? Are we talking about impunity? All those things that have been within those 5 years, the 20 years that has been there. How has been the transparent? What about the accountability? What about the impunity? What about the reform system? If we dealt with Agenda 4, we'll be in a better place. If we dealt with Anand's Agenda 4, we'll be in a better place now than where we are. Otherwise, what's happening here from our good, able senators, they are going to tell us a lot of things, but aimed at manipulating and dominating one another until again we come around and say, this one has done wrong, this one has done wrong. So can we see the spirit of the law? Even if you have 20 shillings in the house, you can share peacefully if you are not quarreling.
Yes.
But so long as we are divided, a house divided will never stand. If you have 20 shillings and we know it's using it, as she says, you are not manipulating me, dominating me to do what you want, and then you give me 2 shillings, I react. So what are the governors saying? What the governor is saying has been there, but the question is, where have they before? What have been happening before? They have misused the money that was there, or they have used it well. If they have used it well, we thank God. But if something has gone wrong, then we need to come round on the table and agree. How do we share the 20 shillings? It will be dangerous to tell me you gave me 5 shillings when you are giving somebody else 9. And in my opinion, we are supposed to share 5-5. What about the payments? How do you tell me that you have paid so and so and you have not paid me, and we are the same children going the same schools?
Right.
So can we sit together as a house and agree, not only legally, but what the spirit of the law had, we can be able to move together.
Okay.
But also to just add is that it's important. I think we've been crying, can we itemize the budget? Itemize your budget. Counties cannot tell me up to now, you've not been able to know that you can spend 40% in current expenditure and do the rest. It is time. You imagine if we had put in the Constitution, which I think it's there, there was a period where they were supposed now to start empowering themselves and moving on. So if that was there, what would happen to these counties? You want to tell me we would have closed down the counties? Because if the national government would have decided, we are supporting you to this time and you move on, what will happen? We can never...
But as you say that, because...
You see, also we want to... That is the problem with all of us. We run away. If the de facto county councils used to pay their own salaries, they never used to get money from national government. They didn't have the revenues that today we have in counties. I'm not saying don't give counties money. I'm just saying also accountability at that level. I think it's time, because whatever you collect on the ground, if you have been mopping it up. I remember when Kabogo, the former governor, Kiambu got at, when we were in Senate, do you know he moved it to 2 billion in his account? And so you cannot say Kidero in Nairobi mopped up and was able to collect the highest revenue nobody has ever collected that time. I will tell you, even today, I haven't seen my governor there. Why? My governor has put in a system. He is paying salaries, by the way. That one we cannot blame him. He is trying his best to see his paid salaries, and then he definitely his local revenue, he's mopping it up, keep and using it as he calls in for more. But then we must, 10 years, we are going 15 years. We must now ask ourselves, how much revenue does County X locally, is it able to collect?
Right.
So that even if anything happens, you are able to stabilize yourself. But if the way Speaker Wangari has said here, that indeed we have gone round, now we are back ourselves. I'm even wondering how the law is, because you cannot come now and audit yourself. You know, it is crazy. Yeah, if I was a governor, now I'm a senator, I'm auditing myself. I mean, really. And then, if indeed you don't have money, why would you go and do the functions of the national government? Yet the Constitution was very clear. Why are you headed to those functions? Yet you are saying you don't have money, yet you are getting money. The money you would have used for something else. You've decided to do a function that was for national government. Why are you even there? You know, so as much as we are saying, stick on your functions so that you don't find yourself also straining so much. But at the same time,
Right.
even as we support devolution, it is time now we would want to know how our local revenues, the ones you've been charging our people down there, how much is it? And we need also to see, and senators to be very serious about, but because senators are the ones who want to become governors, trust me, they will not do it. And that is the challenge we have faced. And that is why we must change the law. That if indeed you have been a governor for 10 years, you must sit for 5 years before you come back to any political. You must have a gap. And if you want to become a governor also, and you're in Senate, we must put the law. Yes.
You know, what is interesting is that...
This way we'll have solved a lot of our problems that we have today.
But you might be injuring the rights to political choices.
No. There's no... You see, we are not injuring. We are saying it is your decision. If you want to become a senator and you are a governor, honestly, even ethically... because, you see, it is your accounts that are coming. Honestly, it is not fair for that.
For protection.
Yeah, it's not fair for that county.
Okay. You know,
I would rather say, if you want to become a governor and you're a senator, that's okay. But you have become a governor 10 years. For 5 years, go into another position before you come back.
And the prioritization of
it's important.
Right.
The small monies the counties have already gotten. Because I'll tell you, and that's why I like the model of CDF.
Yes.
We asked for money for bursaries because it was urgent. Any other thing can wait. We wanted children back to school. Everything else is pausing, by the way. We are not doing any construction.
Nothing.
We are waiting until we have the monies. So what is the priority of the county government?
Yes.
What do you sort first when you have small monies? Do you spread all of it? Do some road here? Do some dispensary halfway? Do some... So at the end of it, none is complete.
Pause and take it to health and deal with
You know, it's interesting that you say that, and I'm also looking at what you're talking about, the on-source revenue and raising that, because for the current financial year, I think the target is about 57 billion shillings, but by the first quarter, that should be by September last year, they had only collected a combined total of 6 billion shillings, the 47 counties.
Yeah.
By 9 months, which is about March 2022, the 9 months of the previous financial year, out of a target of 15 billion shillings, they had only collected 27 billion shillings, which is basically 46%. So even as you said that they have to depend on their own source revenue, they're also facing their challenges like...
No, I'm not saying depend. I am saying just give, because these are not, and I want to repeat, the de facto county councils never depended on national government. Not on salaries, never. And they survived in their years until we came with the new constitution. All I'm saying, if you are complaining and yet 47 of you are supposed to collect 57 billion, which you are not counting in Nairobi anyway, because definitely you want to tell me, by the way, if you are to, you imagine,
inclusive.
It's inclusive. So you can imagine, you are supposed to collect 57 billion and you only collected 6. You are a government like this other one. So what are you questioning this government? You see, you're putting them, in fact, you are now putting them into more trouble.
Well, let me cut them some slack.
The biggest.
Senator, as you come in, let me cut them some slack, because the first 3 months, they should collect 25% of that, which is a quarter of 57. That should be about 13 or thereabout.
Yes.
13 billion. But now they had only collected 6 billion shillings. Nairobi was leading with about... a billion, well, yes, 1.2 billion shillings. So if you had to deduct that, then you're left with 5 billion shillings.
Something is very wrong.
Yes, I wanted to say the biggest elephant in the house about the counties, leave alone the allocation and the revenue share story. It is how do we utilize this money that has gone to the counties. Mother has put it very well. If we are able to itemize and prioritize, we will not have pending bills.
Totally.
We will not have all these issues that we are dealing with. But the unfortunate thing is there is much corruption, there is much pilferage of public resources the moment it gets to the county government. And that is why you would find no one is speaking as of now from among the Council of Governors about the audit queries that are pending across almost all the counties. But now it's very convenient to speak about the allocation. None is speaking about what happens after this allocation is obtained. And that is why I was internalizing the statement that was read. The issue on on-source revenue, all my colleagues who are here have spoken about it. There is a bill that is the County Government's Revenue Raising Process Bill 2023. That they spoke about it in the statement of yesterday. And they are saying the national government have got no business muzzling devolution. You have no business asking me as a governor, how much have I collected and where and how should I utilize that money? So it's self-defeating. On the one hand, you are acknowledging that I've raised 6 billion as a college of county governments, but you do not want the national government to deal with anything to do with that money, even to ask.
But why should they, Senator?
And it's the same question you're asking. Why should they ask that the national government revenue must be shared equally under the provisions of...
Because it's the Constitution.
Allow me to finish.
Yeah.
Why then would we not say the same money? Because remember, the taxpayer is one. The person who is paying taxes at the county government is not different from the one who is paying to the national government. It's one Kenyan who is entirely relying on service provision by these two positions, that is the national government and the county government. So it is just fair. It is just being honest. It's being transparent. It is being able to account for the taxpayers' money. And when someone is saying, look, don't ask me, it is telling more than just the statement.
Senator, help me understand here, because the structure of devolution is that you have a county executive, and you have the legislative arm in the name of county assembly, which is supposed to oversight, make laws, and what business has to happen at the county level. So even if you have a national legislation that wants to monitor what the counties are doing with the revenue they collect or the revenue that they are collecting, how do you place that on the separation of powers?
Now, when, in fact, if you were to read their statement, they have just said what you just said, that I am entitled as a county government to collect taxes from the people.
Levies, not taxes.
Sorry?
Not taxes, levies.
Levies, yes. I am not under any obligation to give you how much I've collected and how I have utilized. And they are saying, let us reform, including the PFM Act, so that we place the role of the national government, the national treasury, to the county government. What the bill is saying, I haven't internalized it fully, but it's saying, look, we are asking for the national government to give us our share of the revenue. We also need to be able to understand how much have you collected as a county government, how have you utilized it. Not because we want to affect the devolution in a negative way, because we want to make sure that we protect the taxpayer from the monies that is being collected, whether in form of levy or whether in form of the taxes that I'm sharing as a national government to the county government. So it is bigger than the money. It's bigger than the allocation. It's bigger than the devolution story. And I agree with you, Beatrice, that I wouldn't be very, very keen on saying the person who was sitting yesterday as a governor is now the one who is sitting in the committee to also review and question a governor who is in office. I mean, remember, as chair, the Office of the Auditor General at the moment is auditing accounts for the period 2019-2020. I do want to say more in terms of how and what would happen now.
Right.
Yes, but that is the reality. When we want to be very candid and honest as leaders, as also people who have been given the mandate to protect national and county resources.
So given the current setup, how would you go around that? If you're auditing, say, accounts of Mandera County or Uasin Gishu County,
yes,
and the senators in the House or in the committee, how do you do it?
I want to plead the fifth. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, but then as they do that, so that you empower also county assemblies to do their work properly, it is time within the law. Then, because the monies that county assemblies spend is the one you allocate. It is not from the local revenues. It is time now we split. Let them have their separate. What they are given by the senators goes. It is based on quarterly they are given, and they spend. This one of now, that is the day, even them, they will start questioning what is happening in their counties. But as long as we've tied them together like this, they will never. It is very difficult for any county to really monitor.
Some,
yes, go ahead.
These are the fathers of the nation. When they stand and read that statement, psychologically, it's a depressing situation.
And the president?
And the Kenyans feel so depressed because if these are the fathers of the nation that are crying like this, what about the normal Mwananchi from Butere?
Yeah.
We agree.
What about the normal Mwananchi from Sabatia of Butere? What will they say? And the fathers of the nation is crying.
He's crying.
Can we come back together as a nation and agree in a house the way forward?
Okay. All right. And I think there's no better closing word.
Oh, yes.
Let's take a look at the feedback that has come to us at Citizen TV Kenya. At Sam Gichuku, the hashtag to use is daybreak as we listen to what Kenyans have had to say on the two major issues that we've discussed this morning. On the front, on Babu Michael, he's saying that these cult pastors are taking advantage of the desperate nature in which most Kenyans are in. They seem to provide real and quick solution to most problems people face, which is not true, by performing miracles.
You're already starving and you're taken to the forest.
Sir Nixon, I think Article 32 of our Constitution, that is freedom of conscience, religion, belief, and opinion, needs to be reviewed and adjusted accordingly to allow abolishment of such kind of worship. Okay. Truth gauge, I think the prof is wrong. I bet you mean Daktari.
Yeah.
To say Mackenzie case is isolated. This is a systemic scourge that needs a thorough public inquest to unearth the larger hidden part of the iceberg. Mackenzie is maybe just a small tip of the iceberg, all right? Bob Otieno, we need to repent to God as a nation and borrow a leaf from Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame, when he came strongly and condemned against many churches and had to put in strict measures in regulating the registration. Then J.M. Musoma, you're saying that Mackenzie's 800 acres are questionable. Church money is public resource, thus government should audit how pastors spend tithe and offerings given. Since religious organizations are not taxed, church money shouldn't end up in personal bank accounts. I'm sure Dr. will not agree with you. Babu Michael, there are so many religious TV stations right now, and when you follow their teaching, they are very misleading. In fact, they assure you that when you pay a certain amount of money, in a week's time, you get what you really want in life. And people believe that? As some more, self-regulation by churches has failed. They should be regulated by government. We have seen pastors selling hope for billions. They live large while followers are sinking into poverty. You can sell hope. And Bob Otieno, again, you said devolution has failed, and let's call a spoon a spoon. Counties can sustain themselves with their revenue collections and still depending on national government. The sooner we accept, the better, as it remains on paper. Aguk Feli, my opinion is that the National Treasury should be made an independent body in order to minimize these wrangles between the national and county governments. The Constitution dictates that the county governments should not be asking the national government for the revenue.
Yeah.
Okay. And Okelo Mwalimu, cash strapped in counties is a consequence of several factors, mainly unresponsive executive arm of government, corruption and embezzlement of funds in devolved units, and having very weak council of governors hell-bent on pleasing executive rather than lobbying for funds. Whew, quite a lot this morning. And
You're not agreeing?
I agree only with Wina on the second justification.
okay. Sorry, you're saying something?
I was saying I agree with the last tweet that we read on his second reason why there is a challenge with the cash trap by the county governments, corruption, and sometimes also now the element of inability to raise the resources that are meant to be shared. But the first and the second, no. The Council of Governors have just castigated the national government, saying that we're shutting down the county government. So they are not hell-bent in supporting the national government. The first is also no here, no there. It's all about the economic situation of the country.
I think we need to cure the spirit to agree with the legal.
But
we make the law, but the spirit must be willing first.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And we need to minimize also legislating on almost every aspect.
Yes.
The way Bishop said, we have over-legislated. All we need to do is to go back and say,
you just spoke to a new law that is
that's what I'm
before the
saying,
House.
yes. If, for instance, the county executives were willing to transparently disclose what they have collected, even if they have automated.
You don't need a law.
We will not need a law. We wouldn't. If some today you were told...
The county assemblies are not able to enforce that.
This program is meant to...
Second.
8 or 5, for instance. We don't have to legislate on it. It's known that at 8 our program is supposed to come. But the unfortunate thing is that if some more today and his panelists are unwilling to exit the stage when it's time to exit,
like it is now,
probably introduce a law. Like,
But you see, Sam, even as we talk all this, do you know the World Bank also is really supporting a lot of our counties?
yes.
Okay.
Very serious money. Okay, what does it do? You find a county with 600 million from World Bank. It's supposed to build capacity. You see, that's now what I don't understand. If you have this money for capacity, then this other one, keep it to do it other
Self-regulation
things.
for counties is not working.
It's not working.
We will have to
Okay.
regulate.
Okay.
There is something.
We're out of time, but I can give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, there's something that somebody said there that they need to regulate the offerings of the church. That person,
you had to come back.
that person is not well informed that if he can't go to structured churches and get their procedures
Yeah.
They
and
do.
pick their constitutions,
They do.
they'll be realize that we do better than the government by far.
Yes, yes.
Because we have a structured operation and churches have constitutions. Go to the Presbyterian church and take what they call practice and procedure. Go through it and follow it. And you make a mistake, we kick you out because that's what leads us. It will do better than even what the government is doing.
Allow me to ask this, in the spirit of devolution, is tithe collection or is it automated?
Devolved.
Is it automated?
Really?
There's a reason. Yeah.
It's a willing.
Automated.
Voluntary. So.
It's voluntary.
Yes.
I'm asking that because we hear people saying that to cure the challenges in the counties, automate revenue collection. And I don't know.
No.
No, we can never automate tithe.
The cost of automation is a problem itself. To be a scandal itself.
The collection of it.
Okay, now it's 8 minutes after 8 a.m. 8
So I
after
take it.
Personal
Thank you.
relationship.
In fact, not in M-Pesa, in cash.
gentlemen.
It's my time.
Honorable Beatrice Elachi from
Thank you.
Community North. Dr. Alphonse Kanga from the NCCK, Chairperson Nairobi Region, Honorable Martha Wangari from Gilgil, and Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei from Bomet for making time for us. My name is Sam Gituku. Bye for now. See you some other time.